We talk all the time on Pass the PE Exam about all of the benefits to your career as an engineer when you receive your PE license. However, what are the benefits of achieving your license when it comes to business development and sales, which many engineers ultimately get into? Well, in today's episode, I have with me Ben Frerick and Mark Ibarra, both from 1898 & Co., the technology and security consulting arm of Burns & McDonnell. And Ben and Mark are going to talk about how having a license can really help you if you do want to get into business and development sales in a big way. Before we get started, here's a quick word from our sponsor for this episode, Burns McDonnell. Career Burns McDonnell goes beyond delivering projects. It's about owning outcomes, finding your best fit and making a difference. Right now, Brian McDonnell is hiring engineers, architects, construction professionals, technologists, scientists, and consultants to design, build, and deliver environmentally conscious and socially responsible projects. Explore opportunities across a family of companies by visiting Burns and ACOM/careers first. Burns and McDonnell is an equal opportunity employer. All right, Ben, Mark, welcome to Pass the PE Exam. We're happy to have you once again. Ben and Mark are from 1898 & Co., the technology and security consulting arm for Burns & McDonnell. Welcome, guys.
Hey, Anthony. How you doing?
It's great to have you. We're happy that you're here today. And I know we're going to talk about a little interesting angle to the PE license. So let's jump right in here. I'll start with you, Ben. Tell us a little bit more about your career journey from being a mechanical engineer at Burns & McDonnell to now leading the sales and marketing team, and kind of how your PE license has influenced your transition in this process. It sounds interesting.
You bet, Anthony. So yes, I'm a mechanical engineer by degree from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. And coming out of school, I spent 6 years designing mechanical systems for gas-fired power plants. So, right out of school, took my FE exam and got right into the meat of detailed design and used, a lot of people say they don't use what they learned in college. I certainly did immediately at Burns & McDonnell, forming engineering design work. I actually spent 2 years in the field at a construction site in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I had the opportunity to design, support the design of a power plant, and then actually saw it being built and acted as a field engineer. Probably in those 2 years, I learned more in my career than I ever have since then. Following that field assignment, I took my PE exam, studied for it, and was passed. And so became a professional engineer at that point with the plan of continuing to do design, but an opportunity came up to become a business development manager within the same group that I worked in. And I applied and was able to work in that position for the next 5 years. So really moved into more of a client-facing role where I called on both existing and new customers across the Midwest and the Southeast, primarily electric utilities. So really focusing on successful outcomes with those customers and really working closely with them as well as our internal team to find those opportunities to work together. And so throughout that, I'm constantly working with engineers, operations, professionals at our client sites and within their organizations. And so really having that foundation to have technical conversations about their operations and their engineering was really important. So while whether or not maybe I passed the PE exam, what is taught and tested within that exam is really foundational to the business development and sales side within my career.
And Ben, just one follow-up on that. You made that transition to business development when there was an opportunity. It's kind of a non-traditional path for a technical professional. What was it maybe that made you interested in that, and that you were like, hey, I want to try this out?
I'd always had a passion for being in front of customers, or just being a little bit more client-facing. Spending those 2 years on my field assignment, I had a lot of FaceTime with our customer as well as with the contractors out there. And I think that really ignited a passion to be out on the front end of projects, having those conversations as opposed to maybe in the a little bit more detailed design aspects. So I'd say that field assignment kind of brought that out of me a little bit. And whether it was either business development or maybe project management was something else that I was excited about and passionate about.
That's great. Yeah, and I think that's just maybe a lesson for the viewers here that if there's something you feel passionate about, something you think you like doing as an engineer, if there's an opportunity, give it a shot. Especially when you work for maybe like a larger organization like a Burns and McDonnell, there may be different departments in different areas where you may be able to try something different. And if it doesn't work out, I'm sure you can, go back and try something else again. But if you don't try, you're kind of never going to know. So that's definitely interesting. So, Mark, maybe you could just give us a quick background on yourself before we dive into, just so our viewers can kind of get a feel for what you do.
Sure. Well, Anthony, appreciate you bringing me on today. It's a great opportunity for myself. Just to introduce myself a little bit. So I'm the managing director for 1898 & Co.'s operations here in the Southwest U.S. And I lead a team of consultants here in the Southwest. We provide technology, security, business consulting to our clients throughout the Southwest. A little bit about my background. I'm a mechanical engineer, graduated from Northern Arizona University. And I took on a job as an intern starting off within electric utilities, starting off with Arizona Public Service Company. I was a mechanical design engineer working underneath a professional engineer for some time. Really enjoyed it. I remember walking down my first P&ID at a process instrumentation and flow diagram. So I don't know if everybody's familiar with that, but anyways, walked my first P&ID down at a coal-fired power plant, looking at the drawing and thinking, oh, that's what an expansion valve looks like in the field. Didn't know at the time, but it was interesting. So great experience there. I spent about 5 years working in the electric utilities there directly for a public utility, and then transitioned over into consulting. So I've spent about 10 years in total with Burns & Mac, been in the industry for about 20 years in total, navigated from a mechanical design engineer, eventually to a project manager, and now managing a group of consultants here in the Southwest. But I really enjoy it. Yeah.
That's great. It's great to have some background on both of you. All right. So obviously today we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of a professional engineering license or certifications, kind of when you're doing business development in the technical world. And so, Mark, I'm going to start with you here. Can you talk a little bit about the role of continuous professional development and obtaining additional certifications as far as, helping you to maintain client relationships and winning new business? Like your thoughts on
Sure.
that?
Well, I think it's absolutely important to certainly make sure that you're obtaining additional professional certifications, especially your PE. Some of the main reasons around that, you think about whether it's winning new business or maintaining existing client relationships, it's absolutely critical that we stay current. Stay current with, number one, industry trends, right? Understanding what's going on in the industry. In addition to that, knowing, just understanding essentially what's happening from an industry standpoint, right? If our clients, making sure that our industry standards are up to par, it's extremely important for us to do that. In addition to that, enhancing our skill sets is important. Demonstrating our commitment to excellence, that's probably the number one thing that we can do. When we show that commitment to continuing to develop, our professional skills through these different certifications. I will also say that it provides credibility for us, prestige, if you will, and it's necessary in order for us to meet our clients' requirements.
Yeah, I mean, I think all those are really important. I think the one that I'll just kind of reinforce a little bit, because I think sometimes it's a little bit underrated, is when you go for a certification or a license, it's basically, like you said, industry, learning more about the industry, right? Keeping a pulse on what's going on. I know for me as a licensed professional engineer, even though I don't do a lot of engineering anymore, I still have to get the credits and I still got to get the professional development hours, which means I'm still keeping up to date on some of the courses and knowing what's going on in the industry. And so it is kind of like an accountability factor in terms of making sure that you're staying up to date on things. And I think that that's something that, is a little bit underrated and people don't talk as much about. But all excellent benefits in terms of when it comes to professional continuous development, right? Continuing to grow yourself, which is great. So Ben, let me go over you here. So let's talk specifically. You have your PE license. Talk a little bit about how that has contributed to your kind of credibility and your effectiveness in your role in business development, if you can.
Yeah, Anthony, that's a great question. I mean, really the foundation of industrial critical infrastructure, which is where, Mark and I spend a lot of our time, like energy and utilities, is at the end of the day, they're extremely complex assets and infrastructure, right? And so being able to understand the infrastructure and systems in terms of first principles is really essential when you're communicating with customers and trying to problem solve right alongside with them. The path and not just getting the PE, but the path to getting your PE kind of builds those first principle muscles. And then once you have your PE, it kind of communicates to customers, to industry, that you understand how these assets and these infrastructure are designed, built, and operate. And so it gives you some credibility there. And so they'll, customers or prospective customers might be more interested in engaging in a conversation with you. Maybe if they see that PE license, because they understand that you at one point in time, pass the exam, but to your point, continually keep up with those PDHs and are engaged with the industry and other concepts that are foundational to the PE license.
Yeah, and I mean, I would totally kind of second Ben's thoughts there from my own experience. I mean, at EMI, our primary service really is designing and deliver custom project management development programs for consulting firms. And it's easy for me to kind of sell those programs because I was a project manager in the consulting world. So I understand what like their project managers are going through and what they need help with. And a lot of times I'll have people that'll call us or call me back saying, I'm calling you back because you're a licensed professional engineer, right? And we want like professional engineers doing the training for our participants because you kind of know where they're at, right? And so I think that does lend a lot of credibility for you and whatever your field is, if you have that experience in that field. And another thing that Ben said earlier that I thought was really important, especially for all of you who are pursuing your license, is the value of getting some of that site work or field work early on in your career. I mean, I know for me, I'm a civil engineer by background, and I started off doing surveying in the field in an internship. And at first, I wasn't crazy about being out in the woods all day, let's say in the summer, thinking like, is this what engineering is? But at the end of the day, seeing how some of these sites were put together, and then when I got in the office later and I had to design the sites, I think I had a much more practical view of what was going on because I had actually seen it being done as opposed to someone who just maybe came out of school and started getting in front of AutoCAD or getting on a computer and starting drawing things. So I definitely think that that's a really good lesson for those of you out there. I know you're here because you want to learn a little bit about some of the benefits of the PE, but I think just thinking about getting some field experience early on as possible in your career is also a huge, huge plus in terms of your career growth. So that's really important.
Hey, Anthony, I want to throw in one additional piece just related to the
Please,
credibility, Mark, if you will. So thinking back, as consultants now today, 1898 and Co., we don't necessarily design, if you will. Burns McDonnel, obviously, we are design firms. So certainly we do provide design and construction services. So 1898 as consultants, that piece of it, being a licensed professional engineer, as Ben mentioned, right, that adds that credibility for us. Now we can speak to our counterparts within Burns McDonnell, who there's plenty of professional engineers that we can, reach out to should we need to. But having that credibility is important, right? As you're talking as a consultant to your clients, right? Having that understanding of these critical assets and understanding how they work is important. It brings that credibility to you, to the client. They feel a little bit more secure that you're essentially the subject matter expert, right, on the system that they're talking about. Now, granted, if we need additional in-depth design experience, we can reach out to the Greater Burns and Mac for that support when we need it. But having that professional licensure, that certification, just brings additional depth of, just comfort, if you will, to the client. So just want to throw that out there as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a great point, Mark. I mean, I think if someone's hiring someone, they want to have an expert in the field, right? I mean, you're going to spend good money. You need someone to help you with a project. It goes for your house. You're hiring someone to do a job at your project at your house, right? You're going to try to find the expert, and their credibility, their certifications are going to back that up. And I think that's something that I think a lot of times what happens when someone's trying to get their PE license is the thought is like, hey, I'm going to make more money. I'm going to get a promotion. And that stuff is definitely important in terms of your career growth. But at the same time, you're going to bring a lot of credibility to the table. And clients are going to look at you maybe a little bit differently now, right? And that's an important thing that I think sometimes can be but not always thought about, because not all technical professionals obviously go into business development or sales, right? But that is an opportunity for you in the future, and this will really help you with that. And that's actually another good point to make, is that sometimes people might say, hey, I want to get more into sales, so I don't need my license. And I think so far what you've heard from Ben and Mark just in the first few minutes here would indicate the opposite, right? That it can actually be very, very helpful for you. So, Mark, let me ask you another question here. So how do kind of technical qualifications influence client trust and relationship building from your experience, from what you've seen?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I had just discussed, just having that sense of security, if you will, knowing that the person that you're doing business with, the expert that you're reaching out to, has an understanding of your, most critical assets, right? Being that subject matter expert, as I described, I think that is important. So that trust that you're building with the client just through this certification alone helps develop and strengthen the relationship that your client is looking for, right? So, and just as you described, right, when you're going to hire somebody to perform a service for you, you want to make sure you're getting the best in the business, and the best way to do that is to make sure that you're taking a look at the qualifications of the individual, of the firm, of the consultancy, right? What are they good at? What have they done? What experience do they have? And so all those technical qualifications are important for us to take a look at. Our clients are looking at them, right? Our competitors have them as well. So we want to make sure that we're, aligning ourselves to that same standard.
Yeah, and Mark, you said something that was important there. I think the term of building trust, right? I think in our industry, in any industry, when you're trying to build client relationships and service your clients, really the foundation for that is trust. And I think when you have these certifications and this background, it makes it a lot easier to build that trust with your client, because like by default they know you're an expert, right? And so. And once you can build that trust up, they're probably going to be willing to come to you with more work, and maybe more important work, because that trust factor is there. So I think that's a really important piece of this. Is it's just a credential or a certification is just another way to build trust that makes it just right on your resume. They can see it already before you say a word, essentially, which is nice. Great. So, Ben, you've talked a little bit about the importance of the license in terms of some of the business development work you do. Can you share any specific instances where your PE license directly impacted maybe your ability to win work?
My PE license specifically, I don't know that I could ever correlate a win directly to that. Certainly having a team and a project team with a PE license is extremely important. But I think maybe less about the PE itself, but more about kind of the foundation that going to get your PE builds. Again, going back to having really a foundation of understanding your customers' infrastructure and assets. Your ability, when I get in front of a customer, I know a little about a lot. And there's a lot of people back in our office within Burns & Mac and 1898 & Co. that know a lot more about me on a lot of topics. But my job is really to go ask some really good questions and listen and really to understand where the client's at today, what are their motivations, and where do they want to see themselves in the future. And really to be that conduit between our practicing professional engineers and the customer. And again, the ability to ask those questions, to have those conversations with customers who speak technically usually about their operations and their infrastructure. Again, that foundation comes from the process of getting your PE. Now, whether you actually passed the test and got your license, or you did all the right steps, you didn't quite get it, is maybe not as important as just having that foundation to ask those questions and be curious.
Yeah, and I think basically what I kind of take away from what you said there, one is that, in sales or business development, you need to know enough, right, to get the right information from people, right? And then, like you said, you have experts behind you that you can go to get more information and maybe supply that more information to the prospective client or the client, which is great. And I think also what I kind of gonna get a little bit from really what both of you have said so far is it also having like a certification or a license can also give you confidence in yourself, right? Because you're having these conversations with people. And yes, I agree that they're going to be like, okay, Ben's got his license. That's great. We can trust him. He's got a good background. But I think also, I would imagine for technical professionals, and I can attest to this myself, sometimes when you're getting into sales, again, it's not a comfortable situation, right? Because it's not really what we went to school for. It's not really what we did in the early parts of our career. So I think any added confidence, right, can be helpful for you in some of these conversations. And I think for me, I know having a license or having a certification can also maybe make you feel a little bit better about yourself sometimes in these conversations, because a lot of times, it shows them that authority, right, before you say that word, like I mentioned before. So for those of you out there that are maybe struggling a little bit sometimes with your confidence when you're trying to talk to clients or when you're trying to get out there and be client facing or talk to people that maybe have more experience than you, I think a certification can also help you with that as well and can make it a little bit more comfortable for you in some situations. All right, so Mark, let me go back to you here. As a managing director involved in business development, what are some strategies that you found to be effective in leveraging technical expertise to try to win new projects?
There's numerous strategies that we leverage, I would say. As far as the technical expertise is concerned, I would say the approaches that we take would be, related to whether it's a competitive RFP that we're bidding into, right? We typically will list out our technical skill sets by person, right? What are we capable of achieving? Number one, for the individuals that we're proposing for this particular effort, we will list out how many of them are professional engineers, how many of them have an additional certification if necessary. We may list out some of their skills matrix, if you will, and kind of check off so that the client is aware who they're getting as far as their professional team. In addition to that, we do have technical presentations that we're able to give, whether it's a lunch and learn, whether it's an opportunity just to showcase our qualifications to the client. We do that on a regular basis. So we'll pull in our team, our experts that, depending on what the ask is from the client, we'll pull in the right team for that and provide a technical presentation to give them just an idea of our capabilities and what we're able to perform for them. And that seems to work really well. Our clients typically will, right away start asking questions and realize we've got a very capable team here that is, that can certainly execute the scope of work that we're looking for. So those are two, I'd say, ways that we go about, approaching our technical skills and advertising that to our clients, if you will.
I love that. I mean, I think the idea of presenting yourself as a well-rounded team to your clients or prospective clients goes a really long way. I know at EMI, we make it a point to do that. For example, if we're starting off with one of these custom PM programs, we'll bring the team to like a kickoff meeting, right? This is our project manager. This is our instructional designer. This is our LMS expert on the back end. And so our instructors, et cetera. And, I think if you're the client, you're like, okay, they really got this covered, right? They got the right people. Seems like they've got them in the right seats. And I can feel, again, it goes back to what you said earlier, Mark, I can trust these people, right? Because they've got the right people here with the right skill sets and they got the certifications to back it up. And so I definitely think that's a big deal. And I think you could look at that on a micro level from an individual, right? Like if you're interviewing with a company, right? And you come to the table, like I've got my FE already, I'm going to take my PE and I've done this internship and I got this master's degree or whatever the case may be. Again, you're making a case for yourself where they're saying like, wow, like you got all this stuff. Like, we really need to have you working in our company. So it's not that different from someone trying to sell themselves to a company as opposed to a company trying to sell themselves to a client. Right. And so I think that that's a really good analogy that you can think on in your career, because I know some of you may be really young in your career and you're just right now looking to get your license, and but you're not really thinking of some of these benefits maybe that like Ben had mentioned about later on, because you don't know if you're going to do business development yet, right? Just like I'm sure Ben didn't when he originally maybe went for his PE license. So you never know how these things are going to come back to help you in your career. But if you're investing in yourself and you're growing on a consistent basis, I mean, it's only going to take you, places most likely in your career. So Ben, one last question for you, and then I'll give us a final question for the both of you. What skills, in addition to technical expertise and certifications, do you believe are crucial for success in sales and business development in the engineering sector, client-facing activities?
Yes. Maybe I'll answer that with a question, Anthony and Mark. Do you like being sold to? Is that something you enjoy on the list of top 10 things that you like? Do you enjoy being sold to?
It's low on the
Not
list.
really.
That's right. I mean, I talk to my team a lot about rule number one is don't talk, listen. Listening and being an active listener. When I was first thinking about taking on the business development role, I never thought of myself as a salesperson, a sales professional. I never really liked that term. You kind of get the used car salesman. No offense, used car salesman, but I didn't want. That wasn't me, right? And as it turns out, especially in this field, that's not selling. Selling is listening to your customer, understanding them, getting into their shoes. I had a colleague of mine say, you're not doing your job until you're in an internal meeting and you're going to bat for your customer in an internal meeting. You're looking through their lens all day, every day. And I think, you get to know them by listening, asking good questions, and being really curious about their organization and what their day-to-day looks like. And, with 1898 and Co., it's, even outside of the engineering side, we're thinking about their operations. We're thinking about how they go and look at risk management, how they think about performance, how do they think about their long-term strategy. And you really have to get into their shoes. And again, I'm repeating myself, but just being a good listener. So, that's the skill above all else. I'll say, another thing with sales, everybody has in their mind what a salesperson looks like, or I want to, kind of act like that. That person did a really good job in selling this way. I'm going to do that. I would just say, be your authentic self. There's a lot of, everybody's kind of got their own style and how they are and how they approach, engaging with others, and just go with that. I think customers really see authenticity more than, you might think. And then maybe finally, following through, and this word has also been discussed by both you, Anthony, and Mark. Trust. I mean, at the end of the day, if your customers trust you, they're gonna listen, take the time to have a conversation with you. You've got to follow through. You've got to do what you say you're going to do for them, whether that's getting them some information that you said you would get them after the first time you've met them, to following through on the proposal that you put in front of them, that the project team is going to make sure and follow through. And so just following through, doing what you say you're going to do, kind of plays that long game of trust, which is, what it's all about.
That's great. And one thing I'll say about that is, I've done some sales training myself. And I think a lot of times when you do sales training, listening is something that is taught, right? Listen for problems, listen for pain points so you can help these clients or prospective clients. But I think what's interesting about it is it really can be a great piece of advice for anybody in their career, right? At any time. If you're a new engineer, you should be listening to your manager and soaking things up. If you are a team leader, you should be listening to your team members, right? So you can lead them the best way possible. If you're doing business development, you need to be listening to your customers, your clients. So I think just generally speaking, from a communication standpoint, listening is probably a pretty underrated skill these days that we can really benefit from at every stage of our career. So I'm happy to hear you, talk a little bit about that. All right. So here's the last question I'll throw at both of you here. And Mark, I'll ask you to go first. What final piece of advice would you offer to maybe a young engineer considering pursuing the PE license or other certifications, and particularly interested in maybe transitioning into that role of client management, sales, business development? What's the last piece of advice you might offer?
Sure. Well, I'll start with if you're considering it, stop considering it and just move forward. Get your PE license, get a certification. It'll build to your resume. It'll build to your credibility. As a hiring manager, specifically in the Southwest, it's something that I look at on a regular basis. So, should they have that versus another candidate that doesn't, I would favor the candidate that has the PE or the additional certification. By far, that just will happen almost every single time. That credibility, we talked about the confidence that I think, Anthony and Ben, you both brought up. I think it does build confidence for an individual, knowing that when they walk into the room, they feel credible, right? And so the client automatically senses that too. They, and or the hiring manager, if you will. So I think that definitely helps. So yeah, my recommendation, my advice, especially for new engineers that are just coming out of school, and also take it early. Take the FE exam as early as you possibly can. Don't wait. Do it absolutely immediately. And as soon as you're eligible for the PE, certainly go through and take that. Certifications, continue to go after various certifications, whether it's a PMP, whatever that certification looks like. I highly recommend that you continue to think about growing yourself and growing your career through these different certifications. It's important to do. And like I said, it's something that we as hiring managers look at on a regular basis.
That's great. Ben, how about you?
Yeah, Mark took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, you're not going to regret getting your PE, certainly. So, grind it out, go for it. Earlier the better. One piece of advice, a little separate maybe from the PE, but just general that I can reflect on in my career is the times I've grown the most are when I get uncomfortable, when I put myself in an uncomfortable position, when I start approaching, a little bit of chaos, that's when I found that I've grown the most. When I went on a field assignment, and moved across the country, I had a significant amount of growth. I went into the business development role, which was a little scary for me at the time, but that provided a significant amount of growth. And so to the extent that you can continue to put yourself in those situations that you're not real sure about, you're not overly confident in, that really kind of forces you to take the next step forward in your career. So I would just encourage everybody to identify those opportunities, even if they make you they're a little nerving, and just go for it.
That's great. Yeah, I try to tell engineers all the time, if you're comfortable all the time in your career, you might be doing something wrong or you're not pushing yourself as far as you need to. So that's definitely great advice. All right. So once again, Ben Frericks, Mark Ibarra, both from 1898 & Co., a technology and security consulting arm of Burns & McDonnell. I want to thank you both for taking some time out of your busy schedules to talk a little bit about the PE license and certifications and how beneficial they can be in a sales or business development career. So thanks so much to both of you. We appreciate the time.
Thanks, Anthony.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Anthony. See ya.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Mark and Ben. We don't often think about business development and sales early on in our careers when we're getting our PE license, but it can tremendously help you in those areas. So please, if you have any questions about the PE exam process, leave comments below this video and we will answer them, maybe even in a future video. And we encourage you to continue to study hard for your PE exam and come back and visit with us, because we have videos that will help you pass the PE exam. And I'll see you next week on Pass the PE Exam.